You are listening to the Firecracker podcast with Tony Rico.
Those are the things you really can't practice for. You just never know.
We practice on that.
It's a great
play
thing.
a lot.
Yeah.
It's got to have the right bounce, though. So she got
Yeah. Well, and that's what you practice, bouncing them off their head, see if you can get the right bounce. You brought up the draw. That blind draw always at Nationals, so you never knew who you were going to get, and there was always kind of that roar in the room if two powerhouses were going to play each other in the first or second or third round and kind of knock each other out. But and there's been some different tournament formats with some different companies now that kind of try to seed teams and make it so that the better teams, if they take care of their business, are going to meet there towards the end of the tournament. What do you guys feel about that? You prefer it one way or the other as far as whether it's a blind draw or kind of seedings and kind of allow teams to earn where they're placed?
I've never gone to one draw, to be honest. I don't want to sit through that type of thing. But that being said, I like the format they had for a couple of years where you would pool play, and how you did in the pool play, that's how if you won all your 2 or 3 games, then you'd have a number 1 seed. So you ended up drawing from the number 3 seed. But I kind of like that. But the other way, it is what it is. At some point, you got to play the good teams anyway.
I think once you start getting to television broadcasting and things, I mean, you think what we want to see. We want to see the better teams there on the big TV game there towards at the end. But what do you think, Rob?
Well, I like the blind draw myself. I mean, I like just coming right out of the chute.
You don't know what you're going to get,
and you're prepared. You play well, and you get on. You go on to the next step. But I think that the draw itself of seeding them is not always probably the best thing. That's
it's
my
a real
opinion.
tough thing to pull off.
Yeah,
really tough.
I just think that blind draw. If you play Batbusters right out of the chute, you better be prepared and. You better be coming out and ready to play.
Well, and we've seen that. I mean, we've seen that take place, and I think we've also seen how many years have we seen one team that nobody would have thought, and they become that hot team at Nationals. Always the top of my mind, I think of Bob Wink, and it was '96, and so you had Amanda was pitching for Steve McNee. We had a pretty good ball team, and Bob Wink went 7-0 and rolled through everybody, and it was like. They were like the best team around. But any teams pop out to you that you saw that went on a run and did really well at Nationals?
Let me think.
A lot of times it's a team that you may have handled pretty well during the year, and you see them and you're like, oh, we should be okay, and then all of a sudden they just put everything together. I remember when Jerry Glasgow had. Her last name was Carroll, that drop ball pitcher with Southern Force, and he went through. I think it was 2005. It was in Marietta, Georgia, and it happens at all different levels. But that's something that again I would say, coaches, be prepared for. You may have beat a team 5 times in a row, and you see them in your bracket come Nationals. Be prepared for the hot team. It could be any team at any time, and all of a sudden the stars are in alignment, the ball's bouncing off the helmets the right direction, and things are just happening for them. And part of that's.
Well, I think that's what happened with the Bandits last year. At Nationals, I think they got a good draw, and they took care of business early in the.
Yeah, they played us. That was part of their good draw.
I just think that that front part of that bracket was tough, and then they got through it,
and they had a kid that could deliver the goods.
Yeah.
That pitcher.
That was the same one that we beat, and when the ball bounced off that kid's head when she was a freshman. Yeah. So it's kind of went full circle there.
I'm excited to see Holloway. I think is her last name. I'm excited to see what she does at Notre Dame and rooting for Notre Dame to kind of get over the hump too. A couple other topics I want to throw at you guys real quick, and just whether it's advice or just sharing your experiences. But how do we handle disputes with umpires? So a potential missed tag or over the course of a game missing calls. Are there productive and or destructive ways to handle those situations? So what's your experience been like? And we'll start with you, Doug.
The old me or the newer me?
Well, talk about maybe what you used to do and what you've learned and how you approach it now.
Well, I think one of the things that what I initially did is I would wear my emotions on my sleeve. And if they blew a call, if they called something I didn't agree, I'd be running out of the dugout. and immediately jumping in and just accusing him of this instead of asking,
It's on.
quietly going up and asking him, and then ask if I could talk to this other guy and whatever it was. But
Is it kind
I
of our
thought-
version of like when hockey players drop the gloves? So we know something's going to happen here. It becomes kind of the side wheel of the game. You know, something takes place and then whoo, there it is. And
I mean, if you stop and think about how stupid that is, because basically what you're doing right now, that's going to change its opinion, or that's going to make that easier.
But isn't it kind of like road rage? Like in the current second, it's not stupid. It's imperative that this lady get out of my way, or whatever that is, because at the moment it's extremely important and seems justified, right?
Probably one of the most frustrated decisions that I got was we were playing the semifinals in CIF. This is like 2005 or 6 or whatever it was. We were playing Riverside Poly, and this was like the 8th inning. And of course, they don't have what do you call it, where you put the runner on second base or anything like that.
Tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker. So the girl leaves early on. It was like a hit and run, and the second base umpire puts his hand, or the first base hands up like that, you know, and the right fielder just sat there because they thought the play had stopped. Crew came around and scored, and we lose the game. But I went out there right now and I protest this, and they told me you cannot protest this until after the game. So after the game, I call CIF and they tell me, no, you had to do it. Stop right there.
Well, you learned after that, right?
Unbelievable.
Have you ever protested a game and won?
No.
No.
I felt my mind had only protested one other one. How about you?
No, I've never protested a game.
I would start right here locally. People might be aware of maybe some history Rob has with an umpire or two, but nationally, they probably don't know the extent of your experience with umpires. So maybe the question I'd ask you is there a particular umpire experience that stands out to you?
Not one.
You don't have like a top 5 or a
No.
top 3
My
or
only problem
all-time
with umpires
greatest?
is if they're not in the right position, if they're not hustling, they're not moving to get a good angle, that's where my frustration comes in. So if you're making a call from behind, you know, a play hypothetically at third base and it's behind and you're not moving into a slot so you can see, a good view of it, that's where I get frustrated. And that's where, you know, it just happened a couple months ago out at a tournament.
Sure.
And I went out and argued with a young lady. Just because she's lack of hustle and not being able to see, the proper play.
And I think that when there's, obviously I don't think it's not all about higher caliber teams, but sometimes, and they try to do this with our national tournament stuff, put the more qualified umpires and the more important games. It's
Can
not
I
going to
ask
happen
him
to
a
us all.
question about this?
Certainly.
Whatever happened with you and the Tyrone incident when he got kicked out of the tournament?
Oh, in Salinas?
Yeah,
2005.
yeah. So you can set the stage.
I'm going to take the fifth. I'm going to take the fifth on that. I think that was more of a battle between us two instead of the teams. It was more of a personal thing, I think.
And sometimes it does go there. I mean, I've had an umpire. Sometimes it just. Sometimes I don't know, but sometimes we as people just aren't in good moods or something. We just I don't know, but appealed of course, the out of the box with the lefties. So try to take a very political, cautious approach in there.
That's.
And I got a coach. I called her out. That's all you need to know. I said, okay, well, I understand the tone that we're taking today, and we won't be having any discussions. Coach, you need to go back to your third base box. That's what he tells me. So we are on defense now. We have Megan Langenfeld pitching, and I'm telling you the truth. You guys are in the first base dugout. Megan has pinpoint control. She throw the first pitch right where she wants to put it. The umpire turned towards the dugout, looks at me and goes, ball. She throws the second pitch. Ball. So he just wanted me to say the slightest little thing. I actually moved farther down in the dugout because all the girls in the dugout knew he was coming after me. I said, boy, he is really angry today and he wants to toss me. So I will just sit here. I think they put one or two spot on Megan in the first inning. Megan comes in extremely angry, like, what the? I said, Megan, listen, I think we'll be able to score some runs. We should be okay. I won't mention the team we were playing. We came back and handled business, but this guy was just flat out after me, and it happens. So let me take that to the appeal. So because so many times the art of that, I call it art, the communication factor, and can you get that appeal? Because that's what I noticed in that time that they wouldn't give you the appeal, and it's what can you say and how can you say it so that basically it's like, look, we're giving that you saw it right, okay? You saw it right. Is there anything wrong with just having your partner confirm that you saw it right? So we're not, not the immediate question of you missed it and they need to see it.
Right.
But all we're doing, is there anything wrong with just confirming that you did get it right? Because if you got it right, he should see it. That's all we're asking. And it is such a tricky place to go because it's in that middle of that moment. It's like that road rage, feeling that you have, and it's really, really hard to get. But isn't that part of that trick is find a way to get the appeal, because the appeal can change the game, right?
Right.
Yeah, and you go out there with more of a calmer effect, and then try to smooth them over a little bit. And you just ask them, you say, hey, can you check with your umpire that's looking down the line at this play and make sure we have it right? Because that's why we have 2 umpires, or we have 3 umpires. So it's not that I'm doubting that you missed it, but I just want to make sure that this call is right. And sometimes it's just your approach, going out there and how you ask.
And if you're losing your cool all the time, you've really lost it. You got a reputation, you're really not, and then when you really need it, you're not effective. So, I really appreciate, and I might be assuming, but, Rob had managed himself really well in this organization. And do you remember, I don't know if it was high school or for the Firecrackers, or I told you you're kind of boring, like spice it up a little bit. But he came over and it was just, everything was great. But there's a certain... And I want coaches to understand this, so don't show off, but there's a certain showmanship that certain coaches have that at the right time, it does enhance and add to the overall. It's like an umpire. The way an umpire can call a strike or call an out, or the way they take charge, not overdo it and dance like Naked Gun, Leslie Nielsen, but that kind of adds to it. And so, I wanted to let him know that too, like when at the right time, that actually, you're making a statement for the team. And so sometimes it needs to get done. And it's just kind of fun to watch us all. Well, I don't really see a struggle for you, but for us to be in the pocket of something where we're still kind of growing and developing. For me, it's just kind of staying there and not get myself in trouble here later at the end of the coaching career.
I remember one thing that was effective when you would, if you weren't getting like a low call, you would have, you'd talk to you'd be, say, to the catcher, you gotta, I don't know, bend over a little bit more, because umpires, you can't see over you.
Yeah, there's once in a while I would say, tell the catcher to stay down and not get the umpire's view or something like that.
But that really works because it's indirect communication.
Right.
There's been times I've went out and, again, it's in between innings, so you're not calling them out. And I'll say, hey, look, I know you've got a lot going on, and I'm not asking you to do my job. But here's what I need to know. If you can help me, you're the only one that sees this angle. If our catcher's lining her belly button up on the corner and she's catching the ball at her belly button, theoretically, that should be a strike. All I can see from the side over there is that she's catching it in the center of her body. If you could please just take a quick look to see if her belly button is lined up on that corner. And if she's an inch off, which explains why we're missing this call, can you just smack her in the head for me and just knock her back? And they laugh. Right? But really what you've done is you've pointed out an alignment to them that for whatever reason they weren't seeing, right? And then next it just starts to come back. But you deflected it. You didn't put it on them. I would say 8 out of 10 times I would get that laughter and I would get some type of realignment. 2 out of 10, I'm having a bad day. It doesn't matter what you say to me, but how can you indirectly kind of present something to them? And you're talking to your catcher.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do that too, and I'll take my lineup card out like I'm talking about my lineup card, so I'm not like putting them out or showing them up and just saying, hey, where's our catcher sitting up? I mean, is she jerking the ball back in, or what is she doing?
Yeah,
so it doesn't indirectly make them look bad.
That's important for coaches to know, because what you're doing is you're not giving anything away in behavior. People could be watching the game from the stands or anything, and you're not making obvious that they're being attacked, because you think about it, it can be a pretty lonely position where they're at, and I don't think they really umpire for the self-gratification they get every game, and so they do it truly for the right reasons. But there is a responsibility, as you said, because you have to be able to get yourself in position. You have to be able, for somebody's coaching third base as a coach, and you can't move up the line towards home to get somebody around, then you might want to, reconsider what you're doing out there.
One thing too is I think the communication between the catcher and the umpire can really help out. I love the fact where you're not getting a call earlier in the game and you're getting the same pitch, and just the communication and how the catcher does a few things makes all the difference in the world.
One question on dealing with parents, and then we're going to go through some quick questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So, because I know Rob's getting antsy here, so we're gonna kind of move it along. But think about what's your best advice, or the advice you can give our coaches on how to handle parents, on creating guidelines with parents, creating boundaries, so that we all have kind of our place. But what would you?
I think one thing on your initial meeting, I'm talking about travel ball right now, okay? Because a lot of this is separate between the high school and in travel. And so one of the things, I think how you talk to the parents initially and kind of let them know the boundaries. And I think communication is good. You don't want to have parents come up, because after doing this a while, you get one phone call from a parent. You can usually tell, because they're usually going to start out with kind of a real innocent question. And basically, the motivation behind all this is the playing time of their kid.
Sure.
I used to say, you think you have the most loyal parents in the world. Just don't play their kid for a weekend and see how loyal they are.
Right.
I mean, it's completely different. But whether you're talking about finances, about roles, whatever it is, you talk to the parents, be honest with them. I mean, not negative, but there's a way to approach them that they can understand. Don't lie to them, because that's something you can never take away.
Be in charge, but talk with them, not at them.
Right, exactly.
But be in charge.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Rob?
I just think you set boundaries right off the start.
Big difference between high school and travel ball, and how you.
Not for me, no.
So
the only difference is maybe in high school is that you kind of play the political game just a little bit more than you do in travel ball, because of certain circumstances. But for the most part, it's pretty much the same. But I just think that you set boundaries right up the front.
And is this in a big meeting that you have? Are you sending out also handouts and things like that, or
you just have a meeting prior to it without the players? You just have just the parents, and you set the guidelines. This is the expectations. These are what the things that, the guidelines that we go through, and we don't overstep them.
One of the things too is with recruiting, and I know you don't have to do it near as much at the 18s as they do in the 14s now, and used to be in the 16s, but still the same thing. That causes a lot of stress from the parents, and there again, it's important right off the beginning to have a meeting with the parents, have somebody in place during, hopefully aside from you or some of your coaches, or if you do have a coach, make sure that they're available at game time with profile sheets, and because you're going to have parents that are going to stress out every time they see their dream school. And
they really start keeping score, and then it gets to the point, and I know a lot of people they'll agree that they've seen this where people will get upset because a coach didn't get up and talk to certain coaches, and it's this perception of what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. Everybody goes to school. Everybody gets their scholarship. We don't know when, we don't, but when you're over managing the environment for that college coach, you're turning them off. So even whoever you're choosing to hand out those profiles, if it is going to be a parent, make sure that someone that understands the guidelines and doesn't oversell. And in the last line, say, by the way, my daughter's pitching the next game at 2:30. It's the worst thing you can do, because you're really developing a relationship. And I think that's so important that you don't misrepresent. So, it's super important. I think I deal with most, and I try to explain to coaches and parents, my position here with the organization is we try to follow the law as much as possible. I'll get a lot of concerns from parents on, this happened with the team, coach left, or we're no longer on the team, and I feel I should have this X amount of money back. And so I always have to go back to and a verbal contract holds up in court, but it's always better to have it in writing. So coaches, put it in writing. If you're going to say your startup dues are going to cover Colorado tournament and the cost of our helmets, then if that family leaves the team and they don't get their helmet and they didn't participate in Colorado, then you have what's known as a legal contract and they're entitled to something back. So have your verbiage and be careful of that. But I get a lot of that. And the other one, probably on the coaches' end of it, is transparency. So many coaches in our, pretty much everyone volunteers, and they all have different strengths. The guy that understands how to balance a checkbook usually doesn't understand the first and third defense very well. Right. And so a lot of coaches out there have game knowledge, but they don't take care of their finances. And it's not because they're malintended and they're malicious people are trying to cheat and steal, but you have a responsibility to keep track of your finances. And so I implore you to find someone to do that for you, because I know that I'm a collection of all the great people around me that empower my crazy ideas and this mouth that goes all day, but there's a lot of things I don't handle myself, and you have a great network of people around you. In high school, about how big is your network of people that are doing important jobs that you delegate and that make that machine at Los Alamitos go?
There's probably about 8 of us.
Who are some key people over there?
Janet Fettig, is the person behind the scenes that just keeps everything together.
Administrative minded?
Absolutely. And I'm a firm believer if you're only as good as the people that are surrounding you.
Yeah.
So, but we have a great group of people there. Kim Denhart is our booster president, who keeps everything in line and who makes things tick over there. But Janet is the biggest part behind the scenes.
Are those relationships that develop over time as people are in the program and you get to know them over time? I mean, because you seem to have a pretty solid crew of even parents that are handling responsibilities and things like that.
Yeah, there's people that you trust, that you build a rapport with, and that you trust that will do the right thing for the entire group and not just individuals or just their own kid. Janet's been coaching with me for 30 years. I mean, she's been the right-hand man for me for 31 years. So she's somebody that I trust with my life.
How do you keep her happy for 30 years? You buy her flowers? Yeah. What's your secret?
Financially, our booster club takes care of her.
Good.
And then we just have a great relationship. We're very, very good friends.
Anybody in your network you're not so fond of, and maybe one step away from being out the door that we just kind of want to?
They're going to hear about it.
Sure. Create a little chaos.
Absolutely. And she knows who she is.
But we'll get to her later. How about you, Doug? You always had a pretty strong support network around you, or are you the one-man show? I mean, how did it work? You had a lot of years at Modern Day, and we mentioned John Petrie earlier. Been coaching with you quite a long time.
Right. As far as from a financial standpoint, as one of my philosophies was always prepare for worst case scenarios. So at that time, it was chasing a berth, and we've been really, really fortunate that all our teams always never have not gone to nationals, and we've always either got a berth fairly early or but there have some times where we didn't, and so once they know ahead of time, I think what their cost is going to be and how to deal with that as according to have a coach come back and say, well, we didn't make it here, so we're going to have to collect some more money from all the parents, and we got to pay for this tournament here, and then we won this tournament, or we're going to be qualified for nationals, so we got to pay for this now, instead of just preparing early. Then you can always give back the money somehow or whatever, or however you want to handle that thing. But again, keep yourself transparent.
Yeah, learn to create a surplus. We go month to month and event to event, and I think we need to do a whole podcast on budgeting. I think that would be very beneficial. Mm-hmm. Okay, if I were to ask you guys, who comes to mind if I ask you the greatest softball player of all time?
In my opinion, the greatest softball player?
Your opinion.
I like Lisa Fernandez a lot. In fact, she was probably one of the greatest players in the world for like 10 years.
Good choice.
Go ahead.
I would say Lisa Fernandez also. I mean, she can play defense and she can hit. I mean, she was the face of softball for years. I think that she was probably
And really kind of
hands
pre-glam
down.
before all the ESPN ratings. So I'm going to throw it in there with my vote too, that Lisa Fernandez easily, and she carried the sport on her shoulder all through the 90s, did it with the bat. But there was one particular at bat that I have somewhere on a VHS tape, and it was Cal versus UCLA, and Michelle Granger was pitching. And I don't know her personally, but I've heard plenty about her level of competitiveness. She would kind of let you know. And Lisa was hitting, Granger's pitching, it was at UCLA, and Lisa calls timeout. Just as Granger starts the windup. So Granger finishes the windup and rolls the ball. I mean, the ball just like skipping a rock.
Uh-huh.
If I remember it right, Lisa steps in next at bat, next pitch, and Granger throws the ball up on the backstop. 70 miles an hour, and it was about 10 feet over the catcher's head. Mm-hmm. Lisa stays composed the whole time. Never, doesn't, nothing like that. Kind of playing mind games. Might maybe foul a ball or two off. Earns the walk. But it was this battle between Granger and Fernandez. And Granger, you could see the fire just burning all over the place. Mm-hmm. You could see Lisa just kind of pushing her buttons. Fouled a couple pitches off, nothing happened. But that was a legendary battle right there. But I think a lot of people would agree with that. Here's kind of an interesting one, just personal preference: jazz or country music. If you had to pick one or the two.
Oh, country.
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 What do you think Mr. Bernard would say?
Jazz.
Jazz. He's a jazz guy. I'm not a wordy guy. I would tend to say jazz, but the drumming's a lot more rock and roll like in country right now, and I really like that. So I think I would be okay. Favorite kind of donut? I'm going to pick one out of the case, Doug. What are you going to grab?
I haven't had donuts in a long time, but I
What was your last favorite donut?
I like those maple bars.
You can almost smell it right now just thinking about it, huh?
Mine would be a lemon filled.
A lemon filled. You're
That's
one of those,
good, too.
You're one of those cream filled guys, huh?
Yeah. Well, or lemon.
I might be with you. I might be either a maple or a chocolate bar. All right, think back now, a long time ago, 1800s. What's your best childhood memory? The time you were happiest doing something. What made really the best part of your childhood?
Mine would be playing Little League at a park off of Cerulean, West Garden Grove Little League.
And was it just playing the games, or was it hanging at the park all week while your buddies played, playing ditch 'em, wiffle ball, all that?
It was playing, riding our bikes. There was a field off to the side. There was 4 fields, and then there was a dirt field where there was ramps and all different things.
Making jumps all over the place.
We would, our little BMX bikes, we would be, jumping over people and just being down at the field all day Saturday.
Did you have a favorite or a best bike that you ever had?
I had a yellow BMX bike that I had that was awesome.
I think so many people started off with the Schwinn Stingray, and then I remember when the Mongoose came out, and I think I was 12 when I got the Mongoose, and I broke the rims on that baby in about probably 2 months or something like that. How about you, Doug?
Well, I got traded by my dad in Little League.
That's
to
right.
Another team, but
But favorite childhood memory? Could it be trips you took?
well,
or...
the fact that I didn't get to next is we beat him in the playoffs, my dad's team, and we.
So that was your best.
I got a big hit in that game. Stole a few bases on him. So.
That's pretty intense. My best childhood
Yeah.
memory is me coming back after being traded by my dad to getting the hit to beat him.
No, almost anything I did with my dad. He just had that special bond where I was just made everything. He was one of those guys that just made everything better.
Yeah, I have to agree. Mine too. My dad was.
I used to wait for my dad to pull around the corner. Mm-hmm. He'd be come home from in his work truck. It'd be about 4:30, 4:45, and I had maybe a 3-second window to show. It was all about playing catch. Dad, would you play catch with me? Like, would you play catch? But I never had any new baseballs because I would lose anything, and they never really bought me. So I would put electrical tape around an orange, anything that was And Dad would play catch, and he'd look at my glove, and what I remember him going, "That's not even round," and he would just and if I couldn't get him in that 3 seconds, and once he took his work shoes off, that was it. And if you could just get him to stop and play catch for a little bit, and then I never would understand why his elbow would hurt. Right now, I understand why his elbow hurts. I mean, my elbow hurts just sleeping like this at night, and I'm like, "What the heck happened?" But pretty interesting. And I really agree with the park setup. I also grew up on a street where just the kids played on the street. We relay races, everything. I mean, it was just you could go 4 blocks down and not get abducted or something happening. Kind of so many things. So, all right, guys, I appreciate it. And gosh, Rob, you stuck around you made it through the whole thing again. That's 2. You're getting pretty good at this. And Doug, again, just really excited and can't wait to have our organization not only here locally. We've talked about a couple teams that we're going to get you around and get you to preview, but you want to hit the road a little bit too. So we've got Firecrackers across the country.
I am so excited about this. I want to say a couple things, if you don't mind. I first of all, I've been fortunate enough to be with a few different organizations. Longest was the Batbusters for about with Gary and then Mike and Mark and that whole group. That's the most success I've had on a team, and then the so-called athletics with Bruce and Jess and Bill and that group, and the main thing though was the kids. It was kind of emotional day. Bruce actually said something before, in our talk after the game, and he was really nice about it. Then the players all came up, and I hate myself in that situation.
That's the toughest part of it, right?
Is I can't stop crying or putting a tear in my eye. I was lucky I was wearing sunglasses, but
well, we're one of those weird places, and so let them know. I mean, they can wear their athletics gear over here. They can wear their Batbuster gear. The door is always open. I'll even, make a comment on the reception I got from all the Batbusters. I think Mike lowered the security for me, so nobody shot me as I walked over, and it was about as warm a welcome as I've ever had, and it was pretty cool. So, don't think that it's terminated. And we know how competition gets in the organizations, but the door is always open to any of your friends, and I hope they know that.
Yeah, I think Ken Briggs is going to be coaching with them a lot more, and I talked about his daughter Sierra so many times, but I think he'll be fine. But what I was going to finish up with is I have so much respect. I've always had it with Rob. The first time we actually met when he was coaching at La Quinta High School and I was coaching at Los Amigos, and both had
that's pre-internet.
Yeah, we had limited talent, and we used to. One of the things we like to do at the meetings is remember Paula was. She kept on showing up at all these different things. We could do a whole show.
Sometimes it's just a name, people, and it opens up
But again, I met Tony because I had a lot of players that were modern day that had played for him, and I kept hearing about him, and then I got to meet you, and I got to see, and one of the things that really made me excited about coming to this was not just the success or everything, is the things that they do that a lot of people don't know about, the giving back, helping out families or former coaches, or just things that there's such a misconception of the Firecrackers. I found out, like Rob was saying before he came here, he thought it was some type of a cult almost, but it's so much different. I'm really excited about the next chapter in my life. So.
Well, we appreciate that. Well, you see, we don't try to pull anything over your eyes. We brought you in here enough times to smell things and kind of see what it was. And really, this just happened on its own because our initial ambition was just to spend time with you as a man of this culture and all the experience that you have, and sit down, and these conversations just kind of, went their own direction. But that was the original intention, was just bringing you in because I feel like I've seen a lot of good people kind of come and go, and a small amount of people got to enjoy, what they brought to the table. But, these conversations here and recording them allow, I'm going to say maybe up to 24 listeners now, maybe 24. But I get a lot of good feedback. So, again, I appreciate it. And Rob, I know you're doing plenty of things in the daytime, and you're busy running a business too. So thanks, guys. And then we'll see if we can get them both in here in a couple of weeks. So we'll holler back at everybody. All right. Thanks, everybody.